The massive space station called Harmony Point floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower, its curved arms stretched out in all directions, each one bigger than most cities back on Earth. Lights blinked along its surface, and ships moved in and out of its docking bays like busy insects around a hive. This was supposed to be neutral ground, a place where different species could meet and talk without fear of attack. Admiral Jake Morrison looked out through the thick glass of his transport ship as they approached the station. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much war. Next to him sat Lisa Carter, the human diplomat who would do most of the talking during the negotiations. She was younger than Morrison, with short brown hair and a serious face that never seemed to smile anymore. Behind them, Colonel Ben Hayes checked his data pad one more time. He was the military strategist, the man who knew every detail about human forces and what they could do. The three humans were quiet as their ship moved toward the docking bay. They all knew what the galaxy expected from these talks. Everyone thought the humans had come here to surrender. After 3 years of war against the Galactic Coalition, most people believed humanity was finished. The news broadcast said so. The military experts said so. Even some humans back on Earth were starting to believe it. Morrison remembered the first day of the war. The Coalition had sent their ultimatum to Earth, demanding that humans give up their new colonies and accept Coalition rule. When Earth refused, 12 different alien species had joined forces to crush humanity. The Coalition had more ships, more soldiers, and technology that seemed far ahead of anything humans possessed. It should have been over quickly, but here they were 3 years later still fighting. The Coalition called it the Human Rebellion, as if Earth was just a troublesome colony that needed to be put back in its place. The humans called it the War of Independence. Names mattered, Morrison thought. They showed how different sides saw the same events. The docking bay was huge, big enough to hold dozens of ships. As the human transport settled down on the metal floor, Morrison could see the other delegations arriving. The Vexhi came in ships that looked like giant insects, all angles and strange curves. The Ethereals used vessels made of some kind of crystal that seemed to glow with their own light. The Saurians preferred heavy armored ships that looked like flying fortresses. Each species had brought their most important leaders. This was not just another diplomatic meeting. This was supposed to be the end of the war. The Coalition had made it clear that they were tired of fighting humans and wanted to finish things once and for all. They had gathered here to accept human surrender and decide what to do with Earth and its colonies. Morrison, Carter, and Hayes walked through the station's corridors toward the main conference room. The hallways were crowded with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that it hurt to look at them directly. Many stopped talking when the humans passed, staring at them with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open hatred. The conference room was circular, with a high ceiling that disappeared into darkness above. A large round table sat in the center, with chairs arranged around it for each delegation. The humans had been given 3 seats, while some of the larger Coalition delegations had dozens of representatives. At the head of the table sat Hive Queen Zarek of the Vexhi. She looked like a cross between a giant ant and a spider, with 4 arms and eyes that reflected light like black mirrors. Her species controlled the largest fleet in the Coalition, and their soldiers were known for fighting until they died rather than retreating. To her right was Speaker Luminous 7 of the Ethereal Council. The Ethereals were beings of pure energy that somehow maintained solid form. Luminous 7 appeared as a tall, glowing figure that constantly shifted between different shapes. The Ethereals were the oldest species in the galaxy and considered themselves the most wise. On Zarek's left sat War Marshal Krexthon of the Saurian Empire. He was huge even by Saurian standards, covered in thick green scales and armed with claws that could cut through metal. The Saurians had been warriors for thousands of years and believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. Other Coalition leaders filled the remaining seats. The fish-like Aquarians bubbled softly in their water tanks. The plant-based Verdans swayed gently as if moved by an invisible wind. The mechanical synthesis clicked and whirred as they processed information. Each species was different, but they all shared one thing in common. They wanted humanity to submit. Morrison took his seat between Carter and Hayes. The room fell quiet as all eyes turned toward the humans. The silence stretched out uncomfortably until Hive Queen Zarek finally spoke. Her voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "We have gathered here today to end this pointless conflict," she said. "Humanity has fought bravely, but the time has come to accept reality. You are outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. Your colonies are cut off from Earth. Your trade routes are blocked. Your military forces have been pushed back to just a few systems. It is time to surrender with dignity while you still can." Speaker Luminous Seven's voice was like music, beautiful but somehow cold. "The Ethereal Council has studied this conflict carefully. We have concluded that further resistance will only lead to unnecessary death and destruction. We offer humanity a chance to join the galactic community as junior members. This is a generous offer considering your recent aggression." War Marshal Krexthon slammed one massive fist on the table, making the whole thing shake. "Generous? We should crush them completely for their defiance. But the Council has decided to show mercy. You humans will accept our terms or face total destruction." Carter leaned forward slightly. Her voice was calm and professional. "We appreciate the Coalition's willingness to negotiate. Perhaps you could explain exactly what terms you're offering." Hive Queen Zarek activated a holographic projector in the center of the table. Images appeared in the air above them, showing star maps and legal documents. "The terms are simple," she said. "First, humanity will withdraw from all disputed territories. This includes the 17 colony worlds you have established without Coalition permission." The hologram shifted to show lists of numbers and statistics. "Second, all human military forces will be disbanded except for a small defense fleet to protect Earth itself. This fleet will operate under Coalition oversight. Third," Speaker Luminous 7 continued, "humanity will pay reparations for the damage caused by this war. The amount will be determined by a Coalition tribunal, but it will likely require several centuries to complete payment." War Marshal Krexthon grinned, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Fourth, Earth will accept a Coalition governor who will oversee human affairs and ensure compliance with galactic law." The hologram changed again, showing what looked like an organizational chart. "In return," Hive Queen Zarek said, "humanity will be granted a single seat on the Galactic Council. You will have a voice in galactic affairs, though of course major decisions will still be made by the senior species." Morrison listened to all of this without changing expression. His face showed nothing of what he was thinking. Hayes took notes on his datapad, while Carter asked a few clarifying questions about details. When the Coalition finished presenting their terms, the room fell silent again. Everyone waited for the human response. This was the moment they had all come here for. The moment when humanity would finally accept defeat. Morrison stood up slowly. He looked around the room, making eye contact with each Coalition leader in turn. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. "The human delegation requests 12 hours to consider these terms," he said. "We will give you our answer tomorrow." There was a murmur of surprise from the alien delegates. They had expected either immediate acceptance or desperate attempts to negotiate better terms. This simple request for time caught them off guard. Hive Queen Zarek clicked her mandibles together in what might have been annoyance. "Very well. You have 12 hours, but do not waste our time with impossible counteroffers. These terms are final." The humans stood and left the conference room in silence. As they walked back toward their quarters, Hayes finally spoke. "They really think we're going to surrender?" he said quietly. Carter smiled for the first time in weeks. "Let them think that," she said. "It makes tomorrow's surprise so much better." Morrison said nothing, but there was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Something that looked almost like anticipation. The next morning came too quickly for some and not fast enough for others. Admiral Morrison woke up early in his small quarters aboard Harmony Point. He had not slept much, but not because he was worried about the negotiations. He spent most of the night reviewing files and data that had been sent to him through secure channels from Earth. The information was exactly what he had hoped for. Lisa Carter was already awake when Morrison knocked on her door. She had been up for hours, going over her notes and preparing for what was about to happen. Colonel Hayes joined them in the corridor, carrying a small metal case that had not been there the day before. The three humans walked toward the conference room in comfortable silence. The Coalition delegates were already seated when the humans arrived. Many of them looked tired and frustrated. They had spent the night arguing among themselves about what to do if the humans rejected their generous offer. Some wanted to increase the pressure by making even harsher demands. Others suggested offering small concessions to make the deal more appealing. None of them had considered what was actually about to happen. Hive Queen Zarek watched the humans take their seats with her black mirror eyes. Her mandibles clicked together impatiently. "Have you reached a decision?" she asked as soon as Morrison sat down. Morrison placed his hands flat on the table and looked around the room. His expression was calm and almost friendly. "Yes, we have," he said. "But first, I would like to thank the Coalition for bringing us all together. This meeting has been very educational." Speaker Luminous Seven's glowing form shifted slightly. "Educational? We are not here to provide lessons, Admiral. We are here to accept your surrender." Morrison smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. It was not a happy smile. "That is where you are wrong, Speaker. You see, we humans have learned a great deal during these 3 years of war. We have learned about your ships, your weapons, your tactics, and most importantly, your psychology." War Marshal Krexthon leaned forward in his massive chair. "What are you talking about, human? Speak plainly." Hayes opened the metal case he had been carrying and pulled out a small device. He placed it on the table and activated it. Suddenly, the air above the table filled with holographic displays, showing detailed technical drawings. The Coalition leaders stared in shock as they recognized their own ship designs, weapon systems, and military installations. "For the past 3 years," Morrison continued, "you have believed you were fighting a war against desperate humans who were slowly losing ground. You thought every battle you won brought you closer to victory. You were wrong about everything." Carter stood up and activated another hologram. This one showed star charts with human ship movements over the past 3 years. "Every retreat we made was planned. Every defeat we suffered was calculated. Every colony we abandoned was evacuated in advance. We were not fighting for territory, Coalition leaders. We were studying you." The room erupted in shocked voices as aliens began speaking to each other in their own languages. Hive Queen Zarek slammed her 4 fists on the table. "Silence," she commanded. "What is the meaning of this?" Morrison gestured to the holographic displays floating around them. "The meaning is simple, Queen Zarek. While you thought you were winning a war, we were conducting the largest intelligence operation in galactic history. Every battle gave us more data. Every captured ship was studied before we let you reclaim it. Every prisoner exchange allowed us to plant monitoring devices." Hayes activated more displays. These showed detailed psychological profiles of Coalition leaders, including personal information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. "We know about your secret meeting with the Aquarian ambassador last month, War Marshal Krexthon. We know about the Ethereal Council's plan to claim human colonies for themselves after the war ends. We know about the Saurian Empire's private communications with Earth regarding a separate peace treaty." The room fell deadly silent. Some Coalition delegates looked around nervously, wondering what other secrets the humans might know. Others stared at the holographic evidence with growing horror. Speaker Luminous Seven's voice lost its musical quality and became harsh. "This is impossible. Our communications are encrypted with quantum technology. Our facilities are protected by the best security systems in the galaxy." Carter smiled coldly. "Your quantum encryption was cracked by our computers 18 months ago. Your security systems have been compromised since the first year of the war. As for your facilities, well, let me show you something interesting." She activated another hologram showing a Coalition military base that everyone in the room recognized. It was the secret weapons research facility on Kepler Prime, one of the most secure installations in Coalition space. The display showed detailed floor plans, security protocols, and even the names of personnel working there. "This base has had human observers inside it for over a year," Carter said casually, "along with 47 other high-security Coalition facilities. We know what you are building, when you plan to deploy it, and how to counter it." War Marshal Krexthon stood up so fast that his chair fell backward with a crash. "You are lying. It is impossible for primitive humans to penetrate our security." Morrison stood up as well, but his movements were slow and controlled. "Primitive, Marshal? Let me tell you what primitives can do." He gestured to Hayes, who activated the most shocking display yet. The hologram showed real-time footage from inside Coalition ships, government buildings, and military installations. The delegates could see their own people going about their daily business, completely unaware that they were being watched. Some recognized their own offices, their own homes, their own private meeting rooms. "This is live footage," Morrison said quietly. "Right now, as we sit here talking, Human intelligence operatives are monitoring every major coalition facility in the galaxy. We have been watching you for years, learning your habits, studying your weaknesses, planning for this moment. Hive Queen Zarek's mandibles clicked rapidly, and what humans had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. "What do you want?" she demanded. "If you have all this intelligence, what are your demands?" Carter walked around the table so she stood facing all the coalition leaders. "You misunderstand the situation, Queen. We are not here to make demands. We are here to inform you of decisions that have already been made." She activated one final holographic display. This one showed official Earth government documents with impressive seals and signatures. "By order of the United Earth Government, humanity hereby withdraws from all galactic treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic relations. Effective immediately, all human space is closed to coalition vessels." The reaction was explosive. Alien voices filled the room as delegates shouted over each other in dozens of different languages. Some demanded explanations. Others made threats. A few tried to offer new negotiating positions. Morrison raised his hand for silence. When the room finally quieted down, he spoke in a voice that carried clearly to every corner. "For 3 years, you have tried to force humanity to submit to your will. You believed that because you had more ships and older technology, you were superior to us. You were wrong." He walked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each coalition leader as he passed. "You see, there is something about humans that you never understood. When we fight, we do not fight to achieve temporary advantage or to gain territory. When humans go to war, we fight to win completely and permanently." Hayes stood up and began packing away the holographic projector. "You offered us terms that would make humanity a subordinate species in your galactic empire. You expected us to be grateful for the chance to serve you. Instead, we studied you, learned your weaknesses, and prepared for this day." Carter returned to her seat but did not sit down. "The human government has decided that we have no interest in being part of your galactic community. We reject your authority, your laws, and your so-called generous offer. Humanity is leaving." War Marshal Krexthon's voice was a threatening growl. "You cannot simply leave.
We will not allow it."
The coalition will use force to bring you back." Morrison stopped walking and turned to face the Saurian leader. His expression was pleasant, almost friendly, but something in his eyes made several aliens take a step backward. "Marshal, you still do not understand. Force is exactly what we have been preparing for. The question is not whether you will try to stop us. The question is whether you will survive the attempt." The room fell silent again. This time it was not the silence of shock or surprise. It was the silence of fear. For the first time since the war began, the coalition leaders were starting to understand that they might not be dealing with desperate refugees, begging for mercy. Morrison walked back to his chair and picked up a small bag that contained the few personal items he had, brought to the station. "The human delegation will be leaving Harmony Point in 1 hour, he said calmly. "We suggest you use that time to contact your governments and explain the new situation." Carter and Hayes gathered their materials and prepared to leave. As they walked toward the door, Speaker Luminous 7 called out desperately, "Wait, surely we can discuss this further. There must be terms we can all agree on." Morrison paused at the door and looked back. "Speaker, 3 years ago you had the chance to treat humanity as equals. You chose war instead. Yesterday, the coalition leaders sat in stunned silence for several minutes after the humans left the conference room. They stared at the empty chairs where Morrison, Carter, and Hayes had been sitting, as if the 3 humans might suddenly reappear and tell them this had all been some kind of joke. But the holographic displays were still floating in the air above the table, showing detailed information about coalition secrets that should have been impossible for anyone to obtain. War Marshal Krexthon was the first to break the silence. He stood up and roared in anger, his massive claws scraping against the metal table. "This is unacceptable. How dare these primitive creatures threaten us? I will contact the Saurian fleet immediately and order them to destroy every human ship in this system." Hive Queen Zarek clicked her mandibles together rapidly. "Wait, Marshal. We need to understand what just happened here. How did the humans obtain this information? How long have they been watching us?" Speaker Luminous 7's glowing form flickered with agitation. "More importantly, what else do they know? If they have been monitoring our facilities for years, what other secrets might they have discovered?" Before anyone could answer, the room's main display screen activated on its own. The coalition leaders looked up in alarm as Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the screen. He was no longer in the conference room but appeared to be on the bridge of a human ship. "Greetings, Coalition leaders," Morrison said with that same cold smile. "I hope you are enjoying your discussion about what to do next. Please do not let us interrupt." Several aliens jumped to their feet and began looking around the room frantically. How were the humans accessing their private meeting? The conference room was supposed to be completely secure from outside monitoring. Morrison seemed to read their minds. "You are probably wondering how we are watching you right now. The answer is simple. Harmony Point has been under human surveillance since the day it was built. Every room, every corridor, every private chamber has been monitored by our intelligence services." Colonel Hayes appeared next to Morrison on the screen. "We thought you might want to see what your military forces are doing while you sit here talking." The display changed to show dozens of different views from around the galaxy. Coalition ships were moving into attack positions, heading toward human space with obvious hostile intent. "It seems your commanders did not wait for orders," Hayes said calmly. "The Saurian Third Fleet is already moving toward the Alpha Centauri system. The Vexi battle swarms are heading for the human colonies in the Tau Ceti region. The Ethereal Council's warships are preparing to attack Earth itself." War Marshal Krexthon looked confused and angry. "How do you know about our fleet movements? Those orders were sent through encrypted channels." Morrison reappeared on the screen. "Marshal, I thought we had made this clear. We have been monitoring all Coalition communications for over 2 years. We know about every ship movement, every tactical plan, every strategic decision before your own commanders receive their orders." The display changed again, this time showing what looked like a 3-dimensional map of the entire galaxy. Hundreds of small blue dots were scattered across the star systems, moving in complex patterns. "These blue dots represent Coalition military vessels," Hayes explained. "As you can see, most of your fleets are now heading toward human space, preparing to enforce your demands through military action." Lisa Carter appeared on the screen next to the two men. "What you cannot see are the red dots," she said. "Allow me to correct that." Suddenly, thousands of red dots appeared on the galactic map. They were everywhere, hidden among asteroid fields, lurking in the shadows of dead planets positioned at the edge of star systems throughout Coalition space. There were so many red dots that they almost outnumbered the blue ones. "The red dots represent human vessels," Carter said. "These ships have been in position for months, waiting for exactly this moment. While you believed you were hunting us, we were surrounding you." Hive Queen Zarek's voice was barely a whisper. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected such a large fleet. No one can hide that many ships." Morrison's expression became almost pitying. "Queen, your sensors can only detect what they are designed to find. Human stealth technology is decades ahead of anything in Coalition space. We have been invisible to your detection systems since the beginning of the war." The screen changed to show close-up images of Coalition planets and space stations, but something was wrong with the images. Strange shadows seemed to be moving near the stations, and occasionally the camera would catch glimpses of angular shapes that did not belong there. "These are live feeds from your most important military installations," Hayes said. "Look carefully at the shadows. Those are human stealth ships, positioned within striking distance of every major Coalition facility in the galaxy." War Marshal Krexthon slammed his fist on the table so hard that cracks appeared in the metal surface. "Even if this is true, you are still outnumbered. The Coalition has millions of ships. Your hidden fleet cannot match our numbers." Morrison's smile grew wider. "Numbers, Marshal? Let me show you something about numbers." The galactic map changed again. This time it showed detailed technical specifications for various ship classes. Coalition vessels appeared on one side of the display, while human ships appeared on the other. The differences were shocking. "Your most advanced battleship carries weapons that can destroy a small moon," Morrison said. "Our standard cruiser carries weapons that can crack a planet in half. Your fastest ships can travel at 10 times the speed of light. Our slowest cargo vessels can travel at 50 times light speed. Your shields can withstand the explosion of a nuclear weapon. Our shields can withstand the collapse of a star." Speaker Luminous 7's voice was filled with disbelief. "This cannot be accurate. If humans possessed such technology, why have you been retreating for 3 years? Why did you allow us to capture your colonies?" Carter answered the question. "Because we needed you to believe you were winning. Every retreat gave us more intelligence about your capabilities. Every captured colony was evacuated before you arrived. and we left behind monitoring equipment that has been sending us information ever since. Every battle we lost was carefully staged to make you overconfident. Hayes activated another display showing detailed battle records. Look at the casualty reports from our so-called defeats. In 3 years of warfare, the Coalition has destroyed fewer than 200 human vessels. Do you know how many ships Earth's industrial facilities produce every month? Over 10,000. The room fell silent as the implications began to sink in. If the humans had been building ships at that rate for 3 years, their fleet would be enormous. And if those ships were as advanced as Morrison claimed, the Coalition was facing a military force that vastly exceeded their own capabilities. Morrison appeared on the screen again. But technology and numbers are not the real issue here, Coalition leaders. The real issue is that you have never understood what kind of war you started. The display changed to show historical records from Earth, images of past human conflicts that most aliens had never seen, battles from ancient times, massive wars that had reshaped continents, weapons that had scarred entire planets. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, Morrison said quietly. We have fought each other with sticks and stones, with swords and arrows, with guns and bombs, with nuclear weapons that could destroy our own world. We have learned something that you have never had to learn. War Marshal Crexthon leaned forward. What is that, human? Morrison's expression became deadly serious. We have learned that when you go to war, you fight to win completely, not to gain advantage, not to acquire territory, not to prove a point. You fight to ensure that your enemy can never threaten you again. Carter reappeared on the screen. The Coalition species have been fighting limited wars for centuries. Wars with rules, wars with boundaries. Wars where the goal is to achieve political objectives without destroying your opponents completely. You fight wars the way humans play games. Hayes joined them on screen. But this is not a game and we are not playing by your rules. When the Coalition attacked human colonies, you declared total war whether you realized it or not. And humans know how to fight total war better than any species in the galaxy. The galactic map reappeared, but now it looked different. The red dots representing human ships were moving, converging on Coalition positions throughout space. The blue dots representing Coalition fleets suddenly seemed very small and isolated. Morrison's voice became cold as Arctic wind. Your fleets are heading toward human space to attack our colonies. They will find those colonies well defended. But while your ships are busy with that futile assault, our fleets will be visiting every Coalition world, every Coalition station, every Coalition installation. The display zoomed in on individual star systems, showing human ships emerging from hiding places near Coalition planets. There were dozens of ships near each world, all of them larger and more heavily armed than anything in the Coalition fleet. We are not going to fight you for territory, Carter said. We are not going to negotiate for better terms. We are not going to accept your authority or follow your rules. The Coalition leaders remained frozen in their seats long after the screens went dark. The silence in the conference room was so complete that they could hear the hum of the station's life support systems and the distant sound of ships moving through the docking bays. Each alien delegate was lost in their own thoughts, trying to process what they had just learned about their human enemies. War Marshal Crexthon finally broke the silence, but his voice lacked the confident roar it had carried before. This could be an elaborate deception, he said, though he did not sound like he believed his own words. Humans are known for their cunning. Perhaps they are trying to frighten us with false displays of power. Hive Queen Zarek's mandibles clicked together slowly. The intelligence they showed us was real, she said. Those were actual blueprints of our ships, actual floor plans of our facilities. No deception could produce such detailed information. Speaker Luminous Seven's form flickered with uncertainty. Even if their intelligence capabilities are real, surely their claims about fleet strength and technology are exaggerated. No species could develop such advanced weapons in only 3 years of warfare. Before anyone could respond, the room's communication system activated. A voice spoke in perfect Coalition standard, the diplomatic language used for official business between species. But the voice belonged to a human, and it was not one of the 3 delegates who had been in the room earlier. Coalition leaders, this is Director Kate Phillips of the Human Department of Galactic Affairs. Admiral Morrison has asked me to provide you with additional information that might help clarify your current situation. A new face appeared on the main display screen. Director Phillips was a middle-aged woman with silver hair and sharp green eyes. She wore a simple black uniform with no decorations or rank insignia. Her expression was businesslike but not hostile. "First, let me address War Marshal Crexthon's suggestion that our displays might be deceptive," Philip said. "Director, we have been monitoring your private conversations for the past 20 minutes. We heard your discussion about our honesty." The aliens looked around the room in alarm. They had been speaking in their own languages, using private communication channels that should have been completely secure. How were the humans understanding and monitoring everything they said? Philip seemed to read their minds again. "We have had 3 years to study your languages, your communication methods, and your security protocols. There is no coalition technology that can keep secrets from human intelligence services." She activated a new display, showing what looked like a family tree. But instead of names, it showed species and government structures. "Let me tell you what we know about each of your civilizations, starting with the Saurian Empire." The display focused on War Marshal Crexthon's section of the chart. Detailed information appeared, showing not just military data but personal information about Saurian leaders, their families, their private fears and desires. "War Marshal, you have 3 sons and 2 daughters. Your eldest son commands the 4th Saurian Battle Group, currently positioned near the Rigel system. Your youngest daughter is studying xenobiology at the Imperial Academy on your homeworld. She wrote a research paper last month arguing that the war with humanity was morally wrong." Crexthon's scales turned a darker shade of green, which humans had learned indicated extreme distress. "How do you know about my family?" "That information is classified at the highest levels." Philip smiled coldly. "Marshal, we know what you had for breakfast yesterday. We know about the medication you take for your arthritis. We know about the private doubts you expressed to your mate about this war. We know everything about you because we have been studying you personally for over 2 years." She turned her attention to the other coalition leaders. "Hive Queen Zarak, you have been secretly negotiating with 3 other species to replace the current coalition leadership after the war ends. You plan to use human technology captured during the conflict to establish Vex-High dominance over the other races." Zarek's compound eyes reflected light frantically. "Impossible. Those meetings never happened." The display showed recorded conversations, complete with audio and video evidence of the secret meetings Phillips had just described. The other coalition delegates stared at Zarak with expressions of shock and anger. "Speaker Luminous 7, Phillips continued, "The Ethereal Council has been using this war as an excuse to conduct illegal experiments on captured human prisoners. Your scientists have been trying to understand how human brains work, hoping to use that knowledge to control other species." Luminous 7's glowing form began to flicker rapidly. "Those experiments were necessary for understanding our enemies. They were conducted humanely." Phillips activated another display showing footage from inside coalition research facilities. The images were disturbing, showing human prisoners being subjected to various forms of mental and physical torture, disguised as scientific research. "We rescued those prisoners 6 months ago," Phillips said quietly. "They are all safe now, and they have told us everything about your humane experiments. The researchers responsible for those activities are already dead." The room erupted in shocked voices. Several coalition delegates began demanding explanations from their colleagues. Others started making accusations about secret plans and hidden agendas. The alliance that had seemed so strong just hours before was beginning to fall apart. Phillips waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "This is what happens when you go to war with humans," she said. "We do not just fight your military forces. We study your entire civilization. We learn your weaknesses, your fears, your secret ambitions. We turn you against each other." She activated a new display showing communication intercepts from across coalition space. Military commanders were arguing with political leaders. Some species were questioning whether they wanted to continue the war. Others were making secret contact with human representatives to discuss separate peace deals. "Right now, as we speak, your own people are beginning to doubt this war," Phillips said. 3 coalition species have already sent private messages to Earth requesting negotiations. 2 more are preparing to withdraw their forces from the conflict entirely. War Marshal Crexthon stood up and slammed both fists on the table. "Even if this is all true, the coalition still has superior numbers. We can overwhelm your forces through sheer mass." Phillips looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Marshal, you still do not understand what you are facing. Let me show you what human industrial capacity actually looks like." The display changed to show images of human space, that no coalition observer had ever seen. Massive construction facilities orbited every human world, each one larger than most coalition cities. Automated factories stretched across entire moons, producing ships and weapons at an incredible rate. These facilities have been operating at full capacity for 3 years, Phillips explained. Every day they produce more warships than the coalition builds in a month. Every week, they manufacture more weapons than your entire arsenal contains. Every month they create enough resources to supply a war for decades. The images showed human ships rolling off production lines like ancient automobiles, thousands of them being completed every day. The scale was so enormous that it was difficult for the coalition leaders to comprehend. But industrial capacity is not our greatest advantage, Phillips continued. Our greatest advantage is that we understand war in a way that your species never have. You fight wars to achieve political goals. Humans fight wars to survive. She turned to face each coalition leader directly. When you attacked our colonies, you declared that humanity had no right to exist as an independent civilization. You made our survival the stakes of this conflict. That was your fatal mistake. The display showed footage from human colonies under coalition attack. But instead of the desperate defenders the coalition expected to find, the images showed empty cities and abandoned settlements. Every human civilian had been evacuated long before coalition forces arrived. You have been fighting shadows for 3 years, Phillips said. Every colony you captured was already empty. Every victory you celebrated was meaningless. We let you waste time and resources conquering worthless territory, while we prepared for this moment. Director Phillips stood up from her chair and walked closer to the camera. Now I will give you the same choice Admiral Morrison offered yesterday, but I will be more specific about the consequences. The display changed to show a countdown timer with 71 hours remaining. You have 71 hours to begin complete withdrawal from all systems within 50 light-years of human space. Any coalition military vessel found in those regions after the deadline will be destroyed without warning or negotiation. War Marshal Krexthon's voice was a desperate roar. And if we refuse? If we choose to fight? Philip smiled, but there was no warmth in her expression. Then you will learn why no human enemy has ever survived a total war with our species. Marshal, your people have been warriors for thousands of years, but humans have been survivors for millions of years. Survival always defeats warrior pride in the end. The screen went dark, leaving the coalition leaders alone with their fears and the steady countdown of the timer that had appeared on every display in the room. Outside Harmony Point, more human ships 6 months had passed since the failed negotiations at Harmony Point, and the galaxy was a very different place. The great coalition fleet that had sailed toward human space with such confidence had never fired a single shot in anger. Instead, it had turned around and limped back to coalition territory in pieces, its commanders too demoralized to fight, and its crews too frightened to obey orders for a full assault. The withdrawal had begun with just 2 hours left on the human countdown timer. War Marshal Krexthon himself had sent the first retreat order, commanding Saurian forces to pull back from the boundaries of human space. Within hours, other coalition species had followed suit. The retreat that started as a tactical repositioning quickly became a full-scale abandonment of the war effort. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Endeavour, looking out at a sight that no human had ever seen before. The ship floated in open space between galaxies, surrounded by a fleet of human vessels so advanced that they seemed to belong in a dream rather than reality. Through the main view screen, he could see the construction of humanity's first intergalactic colony ship, a massive vessel designed to carry millions of people to distant stars that the Coalition had never even discovered. "Admiral," called Captain Susan Reed from the communications station, "we're receiving reports from the border monitoring stations. 3 more Coalition species have requested permission to enter human space for trade negotiations." Morrison nodded, but did not turn away from the view screen. "Standard response, Captain. Human space remains closed to all alien vessels until further notice. Refer them to Director Phillips if they want to discuss anything else." The truth was that humanity had no interest in trading with the Coalition anymore. During the 3 years of war, human scientists and engineers had learned to duplicate or improve upon every piece of alien technology they had encountered. Human ships now traveled faster than anything in Coalition space. Human weapons were more powerful than Coalition military forces could handle. Human industrial capacity had grown so large that Earth could supply the needs of 1,000 worlds without strain. Captain Reed activated another communication channel. "Admiral, we're also receiving the monthly intelligence report from Coalition Space. Director Phillips says the situation there continues to deteriorate." Morrison finally turned away from the view screen and walked over to the tactical display table in the center of the bridge. "Show me," he said. The display activated and filled with a three-dimensional map of Coalition territory. Much of it was colored in different shades of red, indicating various levels of political and economic instability. "The Ethereal Council has been overthrown," Captain Reed explained. "Their own people discovered the truth about the prisoner experiments and removed Speaker Luminous 7 from power. The new ethereal leadership has banned all contact with other Coalition species." Morrison studied the map carefully. "What about the Saurians?" "War Marshal Krexthon was executed by his own soldiers 3 months ago," Reed replied. "They blamed him for leading them into a war they could not win. The Saurian Empire has split into 4 separate factions, and they've been fighting each other ever since." The display zoomed in on Vex High Space, showing similar patterns of chaos and disorder. Hive Queen Zarek managed to maintain control for a while, but last month her own daughter challenged her authority. The Vex High are now locked in a civil war between the old Queen's supporters and the new Queen's followers. Morrison shook his head sadly. This is what happens when a civilization discovers that everything they believed about their place in the universe was wrong. They cannot handle the truth, so they turn their anger on each other instead of accepting responsibility for their mistakes. The bridge's main communication system activated, and Director Kate Phillips appeared on the central screen. She looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had just completed a very difficult job successfully. "Admiral Morrison," she said, "I wanted to give you a personal update on our withdrawal from Galactic Affairs. As of this morning, the last human diplomatic mission has left Coalition space. We are now completely isolated from the galactic community, exactly as planned." Morrison smiled for the first time in weeks. "Any problems with the final evacuations, Director?" Phillips shook her head. "None at all. The Coalition species were so eager to see us leave that they provided escort ships to make sure we reached the border safely. I think they're afraid that if they make us angry, we might change our minds about leaving peacefully." The display changed to show economic data from across the galaxy. The numbers painted a picture of complete collapse. Trade between Coalition species had dropped by 70%. Industrial production was down by half. Several worlds had experienced food shortages when their agricultural systems failed without human technical support. "Director," Captain Reed asked, "how long do you estimate before the Coalition recovers from this economic collapse?" Phillips considered the question carefully. "If they work together and pool their resources, they might return to pre-war levels within 50 years. But given their current political situation, I don't think they'll be working together anytime soon. Realistic estimate? Maybe a century if they're lucky." Morrison walked back to the view screen and looked out at the intergalactic construction project again. "It doesn't matter how long they take to recover," he said quietly. "By then, humanity will be exploring galaxies they don't even know exist." The conversation was interrupted by an alert from the navigation station. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Dan Carter, "long-range sensors are detecting the return of Explorer Group 7. They should be docking within the hour." Morrison felt a familiar surge of excitement. Explorer Group 7 had been gone for 3 months, investigating star systems in the Andromeda Galaxy. If they were returning on schedule, it meant they had found what humanity was looking for. "Any preliminary reports, Lieutenant?" Carter checked his display screen. "Yes, sir. Commander Lisa Rodriguez reports successful location of 17 habitable worlds in the Andromeda system. All are suitable for human colonization, and none show signs of intelligent native life." Phillips smiled from the communication screen. 17 new worlds, Admiral. That's more than the Coalition controls in their entire territory." Morrison nodded with satisfaction. "And those are just the first 17. Explorer Groups 2 through 12 are investigating other galaxies. Within 5 years, humanity will have more territory than every species in the Milky Way combined." The bridge crew worked quietly around them, monitoring the various human exploration and construction projects that were scattered across multiple galaxies. It was hard to believe that just 6 months ago, these same people had been considered desperate refugees fighting a losing war against superior alien forces. "Director," Morrison said, Have there been any recent attempts by coalition species to contact us directly? Phillips checked her notes. Several. The new ethereal leadership tried to send an apology message last week. The Aquarians want to purchase human medical technology to treat a plague that's spreading through their colonies. The Synthesis Collective has offered to trade their entire computer network for just one human starship. Morrison's expression remained unchanged. Standard response to all of them? Of course. Human space remains closed. Earth government policy is clear. We have no interest in maintaining any relationship with species that chose to make war against us. Captain Reed looked up from her station. Admiral, some of the crew have been asking questions about our policy. A few people think we should consider helping the coalition species with their current problems. Morrison turned to face the entire bridge crew. His voice carried clearly to every person in the room. Let me remind everyone why we are here, he said. 6 months ago, the coalition offered us a choice. We could surrender our independence and become their servants, or they would destroy human civilization completely. They believed we were weak and desperate. They thought they could force us to submit through superior numbers and older technology. He walked slowly around the bridge, making eye contact with each crew member. They were wrong about everything. We were not weak. We were not desperate. We were prepared. While they thought they were winning battles, we were winning the war. While they celebrated small victories, we were planning for total victory. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. The coalition chose war over negotiation. They chose conquest over cooperation. They chose to treat humanity as an inferior species that existed only for their benefit. Now they live with the consequences of those choices. Morrison stopped in front of the main view screen again, looking out at the vast construction project that would soon carry millions of humans to new homes among distant stars. We offered them peace as equals and they refused. We offered them trade partnerships and they demanded tribute instead. We offered them friendship and they chose war. Director Phillips spoke from the communication screen. The galaxy they wanted to rule is falling apart without us, Admiral. They're discovering that human knowledge, human technology, and human innovation were holding their civilization together. Without us, they cannot maintain what they built. Morrison nodded grimly.